Hey everyone, welcome to the Mod Golf Podcast. I am Colin Weston, your host, and today my guest is Chris Noble, who I had a great conversation with earlier on our long form audio podcast. And Chris works with NextGenGolf, which is now part of the PGA of America, and he's the manager for the National High School Golf Association. We're going to be talking about all the great things that he's doing there to build up the game with young people, and he's also a huge advocate for golf expansion within the LGBTQ community. So we got lots of stuff to talk about. He's doing great things in the inclusion space too. So with that, I'm going to stop talking here and I'm going to bring Chris on screen. So Chris, good to see you again. How you doing?
Hey, Colin. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, good to see you. So it looks like you're having a sunny day there out the side of the window. So where are you joining us from today, Chris?
Yeah, I tell you what, weather's been fantastic. Actually, joining you from Chicago. So yeah, live and work out of Chicago here. I'm a Midwest guy myself, originally from Michigan, so it's kind of perfect. Actually, I have my family in town this weekend, so it's great city. And as everybody knows, in the summer you can't beat it. Winter's another story, but hey, we're soaking in as much as the summer as we can.
Right. I grew up in Toronto, even though I'm in Vancouver. On the West Coast here. So I know Chicago winters. Chicago and Toronto winters are almost identical. Summertime, hot, sticky, humid, bugs. Wintertime, cold. So I get you. I get that. You want to get out of there when you want to play golf in the wintertime, which is a little segue. I kind of set this up on purpose here. I did want to talk about something else we didn't talk about in the podcast episode, and that is about the new PGA headquarters is it in Frisco, Texas, if I get that correct?
Frisco, correct.
There we go. So can you tell us a little bit about that before we dig into all the great things you're doing with Next Gen Golf and supporting the LGBTQ community and also with high school golf. So tell us about what's going on, the movement date. Are you going to be moving down there? So tell us a little bit give us an update of what's going on with the new headquarters for the PGA of America.
Absolutely, Colin. Yeah, it's a lot of excitement across the board. As you mentioned, I mean, this has been a project in the works now for a few years. So a lot of folks are familiar that, currently the PGA of America headquarters is based in kind of Palm Beach Gardens, West Palm Beach, Florida. And a few years ago, they broke ground on the new headquarters over in Frisco, Texas. For those folks who don't know where that is, it's a suburb of Dallas. So just about 40 minutes north of the Dallas area. And I tell you what, I've seen some pictures, seen some videos. And it's just going to be so incredible, not only for the folks like myself who work for PGA of America HQ, but, the PGA professionals, even in terms of the actual community itself. They're building 2 golf courses, a short course, putting course, and it's going to be just an incredible environment, really for all types of players from so many different levels. I mean, sure, the end goal one day will be to host a PGA championship, right? Or a Ryder Cup at some of the courses, but they're also doing it with, a level of that introductory player in mind, similar to people who are familiar with the Cradle at Pinehurst or even Bandon Dunes, with like the short course. And that's what they're implementing. Gil Hands and his team has done an awesome job. So in terms of myself personally, I will plan to continue to work remotely myself from Chicago, but regardless, excited to get down there. And the plan for opening is going to be June of 2022. So next summer is when everything's going to be said and done. And I mean, it's the whole shebang. They got a beautiful Omni Resort hotel. Like I said, 2 golf courses, practice facilities, and then the actual headquarter building itself, for PGA America employees and obviously any PGA professional from across the country to come as well.
Nice. And I've seen quite a few renderings of the interior and the exterior and learning a bit about it, my connection with the PGA of America. And what I love about it, it seems like it's designed with innovation in mind, kind of the breakout spaces, the collaborative meeting spaces. And I really love that entrepreneurial spirit that the PGA of America is taking. And everybody talks about, innovation. Innovation seems to be such a buzzword the last couple of years. Everybody wants to innovate. And it's easy to say, kind of like sustainability and inclusion also. Easy to say, harder to do, and you have to be consistent with that. But I love the innovation piece which ties in nicely to Next Gen Golf. So perhaps you can let our viewers know all these pieces. I know I threw it out there between the PGA of America and Next Gen Golf, and then what you're doing to support high school golf. And so you may think all these are all over the place. So why don't we start there? Let's simplify it, or you can simplify it for us, Chris, here. Talk a little bit about Next Gen Golf, the mandate there, and how that ties into the fine work you're doing to promote high school golf.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, it's interesting, Colin, because, we, in terms of Next Gen Golf, were acquired by the PGA back in April of 2019. And really our whole goal and mission is, to continue to allow, whether it's a high school golfer or college age golfer or, young or middle or old age professional, to continue to stay in the game. And all swings are welcome, right? And that's our whole mantra behind everything that we do. And really the way that it was viewed, especially from the PGA standpoint, is we fit a gap within ultimately what, their whole model and just being stewards of the game. And ultimately with the work that I do in the high school space, a lot of folks may not be familiar, but we also govern collegiate club golf throughout the United States as well. So we support over 400 colleges, universities that have club golf teams. These are non-varsity golfers in college. And even what we do on the city tour side, which is basically team-based golf tournaments. So you and I could be on a team. We're in 29 major cities throughout the United States. And exciting enough, in about 3 weeks' time, our championship for the City Tour Championship is actually going to be at Whistling Straits, where the Ryder Cup is going to be held at the end of September. So we're actually going to be there 3 weeks before the actual Ryder Cup takes place itself. So it's really kind of, it's a marrying of, what our main focus and goal is really introducing and continuing to keep that next generation of golfers involved, right? And that's what we found is we started in the college space, and the main issue that we had is once these players and students graduate, there was nothing they could do, right? They were like, well, okay, now what? What are we playing? And that's part of the reason we did City Tour, because now they have an opportunity to do team-based golf, scramble or best ball format. They go out with their friends, they go out with their buddies, have some laughs, have some drinks, and it's competitive, but it's fun. And also what we do on the high school side as well, right, is we kind of bridge that opportunity now where kids might be in high school, and let's just say maybe they want to be a PGA professional one day, right? Or maybe they want to go to a big school and do an engineering program, but they don't want to play varsity golf. Well, they can do club. And now we have that tool and that engine to really let them know that, we're not just here for you for a year or a few years, but ultimately this is a lifelong experience to us.
Right. And what I love about the work that Chris Hart is the founder of Next Gen Golf. We've had Chris on the podcast before, very early. I think it was episode number 4, about 4 years ago, with Chris. And I just love that entrepreneurial mindset of identifying pain points and gaps and opportunities. And you just touched on them there, Chris. The problems once you go to college and you still want to play golf, but you can't because of time and money and accessibility. Those 3 things, and the culture around it. And you've managed to resolve those. So I love that. And you're applying that same entrepreneurial mindset to the fine work that you're doing with the National High School Golf Association. I think you touched on this earlier, so maybe expand on that. Because I wasn't even aware of this, that at the state level, it's very well organized and having championships and regional championships, but there was nothing on a national level for high school players. Is that correct? That's really the kind of the pain point that you're resolving, or the kind of the gap you're filling. Is that fair to say, or is it more complicated than that?
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, at its core, Colin, that, when we started this, and a lot of folks aren't that familiar, where, I mean, the high score, the National High School Association, we're not even quite 4 years old, right? So it's still a pretty young initiative and enterprise. But to your point, exactly what we found is, okay, ultimately there are over 220,000 high school golfers that play on an annual basis. And for the most part, the only thing that's consistent in every state across the country when it comes to high school golf is that there's a state tournament. outside of that, there's really no consistencies at all, which has been one of the probably most interesting parts of my job the past 3 years is learning about, okay, when are the seasons? What does the postseason look like? Do they have a coaches association? All these different intricacies when it comes to high school golf in a certain state. And the way we looked at it is, there's nothing above that. Don't get me wrong, like winning a state championship is huge and it's super important, but there's never been that opportunity to go above and beyond that. And a lot of folks, I think, may fail to realize is in other sports. So let's take football or basketball or baseball. A lot of times what you do at the high school level is what can propel you to get to that next level, right? Whether it's college or whether it's maybe pro or whatever it might be. And high school golf is kind of the opposite in a lot of states, where there's not a whole bunch of love and recognition for a lot of these players. They have to go out and they have to compete in whether it's an AJGA or some of these other tournaments. So we said, well, what if we brought together the best of the best from each state, who won their state tournament, and give them an opportunity to go head to head on a national stage. And 3 years ago, in 2019, that's what we did, right? That's when we had our inaugural high school golf national invitational over at Walt Disney World in Orlando. And it was amazing. We didn't know what the response would be. We're like, are we going to get 100 people? Is there going to be a response? Is anybody going to care? And it was just incredible, the outpouring of like, hey, why isn't this been around for longer? And on top of that too, what I think is so neat is, and we hear this time and time again, we generally pair the players up, from different states. So you might have somebody from South Carolina playing with somebody from Montana or Wyoming or, North Carolina, whatever it might be. And everybody's at different levels, right? I mean, historically speaking, Texas and California, sure, they're going to be a little bit more competitive. And we've had teams even from Nevada, I remember a girls team, and they won their state championship. They shot 95 or 100, but they competed and they played and they had the time of their lives. So that's what I think is so neat, because like you said, inclusion, it's an easy word to say, but it's kind of in the proof, right? Where yes, we have these blue chip players who are probably going to go on to play varsity golf in college, but we also have a lot of these young men and women where this is probably going to be the biggest event they ever play in their lives. And that's okay to have those two groups coexisting at the same event.
I love this. I didn't realize there was that layer of community building and connectivity that you really are intentional about. And I think that's great, because golf, as you know, it's one of those unique sports. I played a ton of team sports growing up at an elite level, and not a lot of golf, not a lot of individual sports. And I love golf now because it is that on all levels, wherever I play, I meet new people. You just have that common bond, and it's amazing. It's so great. There's that business aspect, but also just cultivating new friendships and finding commonalities through that community building piece. So another segue here on the community building side. So tell us about the work that you're doing with the LGBTQ community to grow the game, because maybe you can elaborate on this, but looking on the outside in over the years, golf has been one of those traditional sports that has been, I have to say, it's been rather homophobic, and a lot of professional sports have been that way too. And those barriers, thankfully, are starting to drop. So how are you seeing things now, or the way the trend is going, and kind of accessibility and making people from all communities, underrepresented communities, feel more welcome? So kind of touch on that a little bit, perhaps what you had to endure as a youth growing up playing the game, and also what you're experiencing, the opportunities now for younger players.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Colin. And it's been a humbling experience, truly. These last few years, because I found myself that, okay, I'm in a unique position right now that, yes, I work with the youth of golf and high school golf coaches and a lot of influential folks within the community, and I just kind of find it in a way somewhat of a responsibility to me that I may not have this role in this position forever, but I can make a little bit of that impact, especially for maybe that youth out there that might be part of the LGBTQ community, or at least somewhat of a positive impact there. And for folks who don't know, yes, I'm a openly gay man myself. I didn't come out until I was post college, really working my first job down in Florida, and that's the thing is going through. I mean, I played high level, junior golf, high school golf, played varsity golf in college. And the thing was, I knew I was gay since middle school. And there were a variety of reasons I didn't come out, but, especially within golf, there always kind of seemed to be this expectation, right? That you had to basically fit a certain type of mold, right, wrong, or indifferent. But that was always the way that I felt. And just small things, right, on the course. And a lot of times it's not intentional and it's not malicious. But even friends of mine to this day, looking back at it, they miss a putt and, that's so gay, or they drop the F word, or, other things like that. And it's casual homophobia, right? But I think we're moving past that. And really one thing I've tried to do over these past few years is make it a mission of mine, whether it be through different videos or webinars or articles, to introduce the idea that, okay, there are people within this community that ultimately love the game, play the game, but there are ways that us, whether you're part of the LGBTQ community or an ally, that we can just change some small behaviors, and it's going to make a world of difference, right? Funny story. I mean, I did my coming out story for, it's a sports marketing website called Outsports. Really great organization.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Anyway, I wrote my coming out story for them, and I probably got like 150, 175 random emails. People I have no idea who they are, and they just thanked me. And they said, Chris, thank you for sharing your story. They're like, I thought I was the only one that played golf and that's gay, or might be bisexual, or a member of the transgender community, right? Because they feel isolated. They love the game, right? They love the idea of playing the game and that passion, but they just don't feel represented. And they just don't feel they can be their true selves, right? It's almost like kind of living that double life. You have to be a certain way when you're on the golf course, rather than if you're at home with your significant other.
Right.
So that, was a pretty eye-opening experience for me. And I will say, through the PGA of America, even, the PGA Tour and other initiatives that are out there, we're making progress. I mean, 2 years ago, last year at TPC Harding Park with the PGA Championship, we actually did it on Tuesday, Pride Day at the PGA. Now, granted, it was virtual. Unfortunately, we couldn't do anything in person. But small events like that are huge. Or, even, I don't know if anybody saw, but a lot of players this year in June, they actually were sporting their yardage book, were actually Pride Color yardage book. I don't know if a lot of people caught that, but even
right.
some of the PGA or LPGA Tour players. The way that I look at it, Colin, is it's all about, it's not so much education, but it's about, normalizing. And that's the thing. I know a lot of people get caught up and say, well, why is this important? Or, why should we have to have Pride Month? And it's like, well, in a perfect world, yeah, 5, 10, 20 years from now, we won't have to do as much, because it will be, right? You are who you are, and we can all coexist with each other. But we have to be able to get to that point to normalize it, and ultimately to show that there are so many different people from different backgrounds and groups, including the LGBTQ community, that play this game and feel underrepresented. And that's the thing. Who knows? Maybe it's a country club or a golf club showing a lesbian couple sitting by the swimming pool with their daughter, right? Maybe it's a transgender youth taking a golf lesson with a PGA pro, whatever it might be. But small things like that can really, I think, propel not only more people within the community to play the game, but for all of us just to feel more like a golf community.
Right, absolutely. And we're hoping someday very soon that we can just drop all of the, it's not a pronoun, but if you want to drop kind of the descriptor, whether it's disabled golfer, whether it's woman golfer, black golfer, gay golfer, and you're just golfers. And I have the same in the entrepreneurship space. I put events on both in golf and in entrepreneurship, where I celebrate Black entrepreneurs or Black golfers or Indigenous golfers or Indigenous entrepreneurs. And I have some people push back. It's like, why do you even need to do this? And as you touched on, because they have been underrepresented and not had a voice for so long in entrepreneurship. 5% of women founders make up for, the funding that is out there. And they're 51% of the population. Like, that's just not right. So until that day comes where there is equity, even more than inclusion, we're going to have to celebrate those communities as we slowly bring everybody together. And I hopefully in our lifetimes, we'll be able to drop all that, because we will actually have parity, and it doesn't matter anymore. It just is. So I wanted to ask you this as we finish up, because talk about all the great things that the PGA Tour is doing, and the PGA of America, and golf in general, and being more accepting. Sometimes it's a negative thing that can be a catalyst also. We look back early this year with Justin Thomas getting caught on camera uttering a homophobic slur, albeit self-deprecating, but still doesn't matter. He did that, but he ended up owning that. Do you actually see, in your opinion, that ultimately that helped because he owned that, and now he's trying to improve himself, and there was more awareness? I just like to get your opinion on something. I don't mean to pick on Justin Thomas here, but it did happen. So ultimately, as bad as that was, that will hopefully kind of raise awareness and acceptance and empathy and kindness even more than what happened. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's interesting to bring that up, Colin, because that was a conversation I kind of had with, and it's funny you bring up those, like, the numbers. So there's 28,000 give or take PGA professionals in the United States, and to this day, I think the four that are openly gay men, I actually know pretty well. So anyway, but we were talking about this, and we're like, how, what can this serve, right? Can this maybe be a blessing in disguise in a way? And I'll expand on that. So the way that ultimately I try to approach it is, I actually reached out with my friend Greg Fitzgerald, who's a PGA professional out in California, to Justin Thomas's camp and even his agent. Had a really great conversation. I never spoke to him directly, but we actually provided some resources that he and I have been a part of, right? Different types of webinars and different videos we've done, even, a couple different books actually on gay professional football players that have played in the past. And I know that, ultimately there was a wanting and a hunger from him to learn more. And I think it's here's the thing. This happens each and every day, right? On golf courses. And the way that I look at it is, again, I know his intent was not malicious. And I truly don't think he's homophobic. But also the way that I have to look at it too is it's just one of those things with culture, right? And I'm not trying to pick on him, but if I were to guess, he probably doesn't have a lot of friends, right, that are within the LGBTQ community. Maybe he does. But you don't really understand that true impact that something like that can make on somebody until you can be around it, right, and experience it and be part of it. So that's why, even his willingness to kind of look at some of these articles and look at some of these books and things like that, I think is interesting. And ultimately that, he wants to continue to, improve that. And I think it was candid. I don't think it was a way that, he's just like saying, okay, hey, I'm sorry. And he didn't really mean it. But at the end of the day, it's one of those where you have to understand ultimately kind of what the root cause of that is, because who knows, right? There might be a 12, 13, 14-year-old person who identifies as LGBTQ, or might be questioning, or whatever it might be, and they hear things like that, right? And it does the exact opposite of ultimately what we want this game to do, and we put these professionals on a pedestal. So my hope and goal is with continuing to do more things, and maybe that's with the tour too, right? Even having like the Pride yardage book covers. Who knows? Maybe for a PGA Tour event one day, they do more Pride events or something like that. Who knows? Maybe we can get a drag show at one of the events. That's probably pie in the sky. But you have to understand that culture and sometimes when you're not immersed in it or have ever experienced it, it's easy to almost become numb to some of those words that ultimately have a really negative impact.
Maybe the solution is getting RuPaul as your brand ambassador. Or maybe
it might be. Honestly, it might be. We'll get her.
That would move the needle in a hurry.
Exactly.
So, hey, as we finish up here, because on the podcast episode, and I do encourage all of our viewers to become listeners. So down below, I will include the link to the conversation Chris and I had, where we really dug into all the great things you're doing with the National High School Golf Association there. So we'll kind of leave that for the conversation for people to go back to. But just to finish up here, if we have some viewers out there that are part of the LGBTQ community and they're feel kind of isolated and but interested in golf with them and their friends, but don't know where to turn, is there one resource, one place that you can point them to right now that we can also include below in the notes that they can go to learn more about where they can start their golf journey?
Yeah, it's and candidly, Colin, it's something that I'm really working toward, especially next year, and that's something I want to continue to build. Right, is that community, and we kind of have our little gay golfers group now, but I don't see any reason why we can't actually make something formalized. What I would suggest for folks who are listening out there, there's a couple great sports organizations. One is it's called Stonewall Sports. And it's more of it's not quite nationwide, but in quite a few bigger cities like your Chicago, your Indianapolis, and things of that nature. They do quite a few, sports that are organized, and it's, a lot of people within the community, allies. Golf is on the up and coming, and I've actually kind of reached out to a few folks there. So hopefully that could be something. And even if folks are interested, I mean, like I said, I'm not saying I know everybody in the gay golf community, but shoot me an email or reach out to me on social, whatever it might be. I'm happy to, connect them where need be. But I think that's the next step, right? Is actually formalizing this, and who knows, we can make a community, and at least that way, if somebody is in a certain part of the country that might want to get more involved in golf, whether it's formal or not, we can help them. And especially the city tour, I got to throw a plug in there. All swings are welcome, right? Whether you shoot 65 or 125, if you're, gay, straight, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever it is, everybody is welcome. And we're all about inclusion, especially on the city tour. So.
Love it. Love it. Well, I'm glad I had a chance to have this conversation with you, because it's impactful stuff, and you're doing great work, and I have a feeling you're just getting started. So that's very exciting too. So as I mentioned, I will include Chris's contact information below. So once again, do encourage all of you folks watching today to give our podcast a listen also. So hey, Chris Noble with NextGenGolf and the PGA of America. Chris, thanks so much for your time today. This is great talking to you again. I really do appreciate it.
It's been so much fun, Colin. Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.